Hi, everyone. So as Yigal did a very good introduction already, these are times of increased connectivities, and then cybersecurity becomes ever more interesting in those times. Today in the panel, we're going to discuss questions like what are the trends that we're seeing in the industry, what are the challenges, how do the different industries find solutions for those problems. We're going to talk about regulations in the automotive industry that are really impacting all the OEMs around the world. And if I put for a second the Mercedes-Benz hat here, trust is at the core of our brand. And if you look at our strategy, we talk about luxury. And today for us, luxury is no more just how the car looks like. It's also what kind of technology it has inside. And when we talk about leadership in software, of course, the challenges and the threats become so much more visible. We all know that when you talk about cybersecurity, it's a multidimensional topic, right? Car to cloud to IoT. When we talk about automotive, it's cars on the road, in production and in development. It's people, technologies, and processes. So it's really multidimensional, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you. And I'll start with Danny. And Danny is our Executive Senior Advisor for cybersecurity for Mercedes-Benz. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about why you think cybersecurity is so important for the automotive industry now. What are the key challenges that you're seeing? Fleet security, what does that mean for all of us?
So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Adi, for the opening question. If we look at the perspective and where we're going with being an OEM and one of the leading, if not the leader, of the brands in quality, so we have 5 different topics we want to address in the digital transformation of a traditional OEM in the market. First of all, our vision, autonomous driving, and we are aiming there. Then connected. Connected is an important piece, but it's not only the connectivity of the car, but we understand that it's all about the journey experience, both for the driver and the passenger. So connectivity lays another aspect to the more advanced type of the car. We have the electrical car coming into play, so even the propulsion of the car is becoming a part of what we call the attack surface, and I'll touch that in a second. And finally, we would like to see more shared type of mobility. And the reason for that is because we know quite a lot of traffic and we want to be more green and a lot of aspects to that. So I believe that everybody will understand here what I say, that the attack surface of the car expands. And when I'm not looking on the onboard architecture as it is, I'm looking at the overall end-to-end connectivity. I'll try to address that. On the other hand, and we see that in other aspects of life, cyber criminals are getting more potent capabilities from different levels. And as the car is getting more connected, we'll see different use cases. They might find what we see as the automotive industry or the smart mobility industry as the low-hanging fruit of the world, and I'll touch that in a second. So I would say that cybersecurity is becoming a new distinction of quality for OEMs. And we, as we believe in Mercedes, the best or nothing, we should put Now the challenges are very, if you look in other domains that I used to serve, usually platforms have a very distinct life cycle. But we know that today we have, as you said, in our fleet security and safety of our passengers and their well-being is one of our main aspects. We have cars that were manufactured 15 years ago, and we still want them to be resilient to today's upcoming threats and challenges. So when we build the framework, the strategy, what we call the end-to-end or entire life cycle, from cradle to grave, it becomes our responsibility. We've taken into consideration all of these aspects, and this is an important part. So now the focus is very short, and with that I will try to end. I would say it's about keeping our passengers and drivers, our customers safe and enjoying the best quality of Mercedes. And doing that when we're pushing innovation into the car all the time, and we are getting new threats coming every day. So this was the main aspect when we've put the framework, processes, and technologies in place.
Thank you. And now we have Andreas Herzig. I don't know if you can see me, Andy. And we were very fortunate at Mercedes-Benz to have Deloitte as our partners to certify Mercedes-Benz for cybersecurity for the cars. And Andy, why don't you tell us a little bit about this new regulation by the UNECE for cybersecurity? Why now is the regulation coming into place? How do you see the OEMs approaching these regulations? And maybe also if a bit of a broader perspective, China, US regulations as well.
A couple of questions. Thanks, Adi. But before we start, first of all, congratulations to Mercedes-Benz for having the first officially cyber-certified vehicle in the world. I know very well the certification number, which is 001. Very impressive. Congratulations to that.
To all of us together. We did it together.
So coming back to your questions. The R155, which deals with cybersecurity of vehicles, is part of a series of regulations issued by the UNECE to provide guidance for the cybersecurity of vehicles. UNECE in this stands for United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, and the regulations issued by the UNECE are mainly relevant for European states, as you can, as the name says already, but also for Japan. What does it do? So cybersecurity, it's mainly based on 3 pillars. First one, cybersecurity risk assessment of the vehicle's EE architecture and mitigating measures for uncovered risk. This includes for sure all backend systems. Second pillar is implementation of a cybersecurity management system, in short letters CSMS, for the whole product development process, including, that makes it a little bit tricky, the supply chain. It also includes, and that's the third pillar, measures to assure proper cybersecurity for each vehicle throughout the whole life cycle, and that's probably something still to be discussed because it will not be possible throughout the whole life cycle. So terms like end of service are discussed meanwhile in the automotive industry. I think that's a more realistic view on how long you can monitor the vehicle and you can provide it with updates. For Europe and Japan, the compliance with regulation is type approval relevant. In mid of next year, 2022, for all new vehicle types, and mid of 2024 for all vehicle types which are still in production at that time. Why now? What about the timing? So I think we have a discussion about autonomous driving levels already for a couple of years, but with level 3 coming up, so for example, highway pilot, the software is really taking over at least parts of the vehicle, letting the driver just put his hands off the steering wheel. And that's the moment where the regulator recognizes that it is not longer possible to assure the safety on the road, in the traffic, just with putting up traffic signs and threaten drivers with ever-growing penalties should they not follow the rules. So they logically do what every regulator would do. They regulate the product. So in this case, especially the software. So there are a lot of regulations coming up. R155 is just the start. R156 and 157 are already in place, and the UNECE regulations are going up to R160. Meanwhile, more to come. You have heard about the SOTIF regulation, safety of the intended functionality, which is also coming up and deals a little bit more with artificial intelligence, I could go on for hours just counting the regulations. That's not what what we're going to do today. You have asked, what are the most challenging things in the implementation of those regulations, and how do the key success factors look like? I think one of the most challenging things is that those regulations span a lot of departments within the OEMs, not only the OEMs, also the supply chain. Let's talk about cybersecurity. It's a cybersecurity regulations, but cybersecurity doesn't develop vehicles or vehicle software. So that's more like R&D. But who's responsible for the vehicles in the market already? That's probably more after sales. Who owns the supply chain? That's procurement. And I could go on with that, like homologation and quality might play a big role. And that's what makes it so tricky. And the success factors quite clearly follow it. So you need persons, or one person responsible for the whole thing, for the whole project, with a kind of power to push things through all those departments. If that's not there, it's going to be tricky to really achieve the homologation, not just now, but also for the future of the vehicles which are planned or which are in the development already. You have asked for other countries like China, US. As mentioned, this regulation is mainly for Europe and Japan. China and US has a little bit of different view traditionally on those things. While the Chinese attitude is to keep data and technology in the country, and which leads to regulations which require a decent depth, for example, of development and technical infrastructure within the borders of China. So the regulations which are there already and which will come up in future have a different focus. That's something we clearly see. The US traditionally focuses more on transparency and availability of all records to be able to explain, for example, malfunctions, incidents, and accidents, but normally hesitate to limit the possibilities upfront by narrowing potential product attributes through regulations, as we often do in Europe. So, however, as the number of accidents or other issues caused by software in vehicles will grow, I expect similar regulations coming up in the next 2 to 5 years. Yes, and that's bad news. Unfortunately, they will be similar, but for sure not the same. So you have to deal with a lot of different regulations around the globe. So I hope that answers your question a little bit, Adi.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Andy, and I think you shared a lot of the complexities and the different dimensions in the regulation and the implementation and also the global scope of security for big organizations. And Esti, now to you, the aerospace industry. So I think that brings now another element. And we had a really nice conversation before the panel, and we shared some of the challenges that you see from your industry, and we compared it a little bit also to the automotive industry, and then what are the solutions that you see. I found our discussion really exciting. I'd like for you to share it with us.
Thank you so much, Adi. So, ladies and gentlemen, smart mobility is here, and it's extremely exciting to be here on stage in person, and there's an amazing event outside. So first, if I may, a big shout out to the organizers for an amazing event. And now let's talk about the challenges as we view them in the aerospace industries. So first, and this is the only takeaway I want you to remember from my 4.5 minutes. When we're speaking about national grade cyber challenges, we need national grade solutions. And these solutions comprise of 5 elements. Number 1, technology. We spoke about some of the technological challenges related to cybersecurity for smart mobility. We also need methodology on how to use the technology effectively. And he spoke about this at length. Very, very good comments, by the way. It was very interesting. Then we need constant innovation because the threats are evolving and the domain is evolving and smart mobility is pushing ahead very, very, very quickly. And then we need collaboration, cooperating amongst the like-minded good guys in order to counter the threats. And finally, we need capacity buildup. training, addressing the human factor, which is always the weakest link. Now let's speak about one of the main challenges, and this challenge is apparent in smart mobility in all its various types of operations, be it the automotive industries or the aerospace industry or even the maritime industry. And this is the fact that as we move forward in smart mobility, we rely more and more on our instrumentation. And the key question is, can we trust our instruments? Or how can we know for sure whether or not the indications that we are receiving are true, or whether they have been tampered with? And this is one of the main areas we at IAI are trying to address today. We are trying, through detection processes and through machine learning and artificial intelligence capabilities, we are trying to detect anomalies which may indicate that a driver, a pilot, a ship's captain cannot trust his instruments. In most cases, there's a mitigation. In most cases, he can move to a manual mode, or he can operate in a different modus operandi in order to be able to bypass his instruments. But he needs to know that he cannot trust them. Now, if you think that cybersecurity is not that much of an issue, then you may want to have a look at one of our partners' booth outside, Enigmatus, who is one of our partners in the Israeli cybersecurity lab for intelligent transportation system, is actually showing live how you can hack into a vehicle. One more second, with your permission, I will speak briefly about the lab, and I'm sure that Mr. Unna will elaborate about this, because this is a government initiative. Got it. So we are very, very proud to have established the Israeli Cybersecurity Lab for for intelligence transportation systems. This lab is a collaboration between the government and the industry. In terms of the government, we have the Ministry of Transportation, the Israeli National Cyber Directorate, and Ayalon Highways, who is the customer, who is the actual leader of this project. On the side of the industries, we have five entities. We have Enigmatus, an Israeli startup. You can see them outside. We have Alstom. We have IBI, the Canadian company. We have the Ben Gurion University. And finally, IAI, Israel Aerospace Industries. We are very, very proud to be part of this initiative. And with this, I conclude my remarks.
Thank you very much, Esti. And Yigal, I saved the best.
Thank you.
She deserves it. She's good. You're good, Esti.
Home audience.
Yes, they are.
I saved the best to last. And I think you have the job with the biggest responsibility for us as a country, right? National defense for Israel. And it's been exciting, I guess, in the last couple of weeks, especially.
Hours.
Would be really interesting to hear from you. What would you see as the main focus for us on the national space? What are the key challenges and trends that you see? And where would you say we should focus on in our industries?
Well, we see as the world is moving fast and going faster to the digital age, the good things about mankind are popping up and rising up, but also the less bright side of the mankind, the darker side. And this is what we call cybersecurity or cyber threats. And we find the first asymmetry or the first imbalance is that the solutions that you mentioned, that we heard this, all this through this wonderful conference, are moving fast and faster. And we have more autonomous, not just vehicles, but other vessels. In maritime, in even aviation, there's the beginning and moving rapidly. The solutions to secure it against the threats led by human. It's not Skynet, it's not robots. It's human that find the vulnerabilities, that abuse them, are still little behind, and when I say little, maybe even more than little. And here's the major part of not just governments. I'll answer about what the Israeli government is trying to do, but make no mistake, not a single agency, not a single country can do that alone, and not only countries and governments. And the example that Esti Peshin just mentioned is a great example of how the PPP, the public-private partnerships, must have. Not it's nice to have, it's not, okay, let's try it. It's a must-have because the governments all around the globe cannot handle all the solutions. They must be inside because of regulation, because of funding, because of a capacity building for long term and other stuff that usually governments have little more advantage than the private sector. But we need the innovation. We need the private sector and the OEMs and all the rest of you to take part in that. So in Israel, we're a little more ahead in cybersecurity at least. That's the field I can speak of. And we have in aviation, commercial aviation, already 4 years program that is moving fast. Next week in Dubai, in the air show of Dubai, we're going to have a simulation with many partners around the globe. In maritime, we also have partnerships. Some of them, if not all of them, we have also the IAI taking part of that, and that's a good thing, a good example to other industries to hop in. Yes, Israeli government invites you to get in and take part. We give data, we give permits, we give even funding in the case of the smart mobility, but more we give the opportunity to try without taking too many risks, to try solutions, because we understand it's R&D, it's dangerous, it's innovation, 50% at least will go to the trash, but unless we try it, until we find the right solutions for more challenging problems that we meet, we won't get there. And the Israeli government, the NCD, alongside with the Ministry of Transportation, and alongside with the great industry that we have, the government and the more private industries, we also work together with universities, with the academia, and with the partners around the globe. And here, I invite you from wherever you come from, the Israeli government is calling for partnerships, for working together in coalitions, in consortiums, in any format that you can bear in mind. Last night we met with the Colombian president that wants also to take part with that. From now we're going to meet a governor of one of the United States states that is visiting here. Yes, we're open for business, and in smart mobility there's a lot of business, a lot of work to be done, and we can do that, but we need to run faster.
Thank you, Yigal. So I think some of the things we've heard here in this panel is the word cybersecurity, and next to it the word innovation, because unfortunately also on the dark side there's innovation, and we need to counter that with defense that is innovative. And also something that came in through all the discussions is that cybersecurity is not something that we should do on our own, and this is definitely something we need to co-work, collaborate together, use the knowledge, the experience of the community. I think even for us at Mercedes-Benz, Danny is sitting here, Andy is on the phone to show exactly some of those innovations that we're doing together to make it work. In the discussion Esti and I she said something really smart on the phone. You said, we have to do everything that we can to develop the most secure products, but they're never going to be secure enough. And this is where detection comes in. Our job is, first of all, to assess the threats that are coming before they're actually becoming into attacks and trying to mitigate them. But if that doesn't work, then fast detection, fast response, and close the circle with protection. So yeah, we're all in this together, and let's put our brains together and do the best for our customers all around the world. Thank you very much.